Okay, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. Today, Cornell Outdoor Education and the Engineering Leadership Program are very pleased to welcome our distinguished speaker, Jon Waterhouse. Jon is here all the way from Alaska. Jon holds many distinguished positions that are a testament to his passion for his work and his ability to bring people together from different global communities around common causes that affect all of us. Jon is a member of President Obama's Joint Public Advisory Committee, where he advises the Commission for Environmental Cooperation. In fact, he came to us today directly from the White House. Yes, so there you go. Drove in last night. I think he even left a meeting early to be here, so that's where we rank.
It's just the president.
Jon serves on the board of the Alaska-Sudan Medical Project as a community development director, and he's also a National Geographic Education Fellow and Explorer. Jon is executive director of the Yukon River Intertribal Watershed Council, which is an international treaty organization of 70 native tribes and First Nations. In this position, he worked to develop the backhaul program that removed millions of pounds of recyclables and hazardous waste from the Yukon watershed. Jon now oversees the healing journey, among many other things that you'll learn about. The healing journey began on the Yukon River in 2007 and has since become a global river event. Jon uses canoes to transport participants via rivers and tributaries from village to village. And the healing journey is focused on gathering traditional knowledge through stories told by the people who live on the river, as well as collecting modern water quality related scientific data along the way to inform cleanup efforts on some of these rivers. In this work, he's joined by his wife and his best friend, Mary Marshall, whom we're also pleased to welcome today. So with a name like Waterhouse, you may believe that Jon's path to this work was very straightforward, predestined. Nothing could be further from the truth. Jon is a Native American who was born in France, and he actually only came to the US when he was 14 years old with his family. This proved to be a bit of a rough transition, and after many twists and turns, he joined the Navy and had an honorable 20-plus year career in the Navy, retiring as a decorated Chief Petty Officer. After that, and in between, he's worked on management and operations for a number of companies, including Green Connections, Alaska Airlines, and others, and was even a city councilman of Cold Bay, Alaska, for a stint. So I only met Jon this morning and accompanied him as he spoke to a classroom full of eager fourth graders who were very welcoming of his message. And I think that you'll see, as I have come to see, that there are two things that are immediately apparent about Jon. First, he's very passionate about building communities and engaging everyone from children to 95-year-olds in changing our environmental trajectory. And I think he really believes that we must do this together as a global community. The other thing I think is true of Jon is that he tends to say yes to the things that align with his passions, his values, and his convictions. And I'm thinking he doesn't always stop to realize that some of the things he's saying yes to are impossible. And in so doing, he makes these things possible. So please welcome Jon Waterhouse.
That was a really long explanation of who I am. Let's see if we can get this to work. It almost worked. Okay, the lights aren't working. I don't know.
It's probably good.
Okay. Okay, so you heard all the polite stuff about Jon. So before we start talking, I'll tell you the rest of the story. The rough transition. It was a bit impolite, might be the more accurate. The reason I ended up in the Navy was I was given an opportunity. That rough transition, I was what you would call a criminal. I'm sure there's none of those here in this room, or you would be where I was. I was on my way to prison. I was going to serve a lot of time, big prison. The judge said, Mr. Waterhouse, we're going to give you a choice here. Now, this is a long time ago. This is the 70s, early 70s, you got to remember. Vietnam was still raging. I think they did this to a lot of guys. They said, you can join the military, or you can go to prison. That's your choice. And I opted for the military, and off I went. And that turned into a 20-year career. I worked around the world, worked in some of the most remote regions in the world with a lot of indigenous cultures, which kind of changed things for me along the way. Kind of a lot of my thought processes. You wouldn't think, that the military, in some worlds we have a reputation where we're just a bunch of guys who go out and kill people and all that stuff, but sometimes we do some good. I worked on a lot of operations where we were working to actually save lives, whether there had been a disaster or people actually did need their lives saved because there was bad guys. So human rights kind of worked their way into my brain, and then I retired from the Navy. I moved to Alaska, met, married, and now we're here. The name had nothing to do with it. I got asked that this morning by the 4th grade class. Does your name have anything to do with what you do? My wife swears up and down it does. I mean, she says, you meet the dentist, his last name is Payne. That's the way it is. So, maybe it's true, I don't know. Watershed, that's a council I run. Last name Waterhouse, they're close. So, why do I have this up here? This is our big, beautiful planet. This is where we live. We love this place, I know we do. We've seen in the news recently, they say in the Milky Way there's probably 40 billion Earth-like planets in just the Milky Way alone. I read the other day the closest one is, I don't even know how many light years away, it's a long ways. So there's no planet B, that's what I'm getting at. This is our planet for right now. Somewhere in the future, maybe we'll figure out how to travel at light speed and it'll only take us 40 years to get to the next planet. But today, this is it. This is what we get. This is the whole place. So what does that mean? Well, we treat it like this. This is in Brazil. And we keep treating it badly. We treat it like this. I'm sorry for the photo, for anybody that has a squeamish stomach, but we do that. Only for their fins. We do this. We neglect our planet. My wife and I went down and worked with some of the undocumented tribes on this project down here. This is a disaster that didn't need to happen. And I was explaining to some people earlier, I have some brilliant friends that work in this industry and the other side, the environmental industry. What could have prevented this, maybe, I mean it wasn't an accident, that's why we have that word, was a second preventer. The blowout preventer didn't work, that's why this happened. In countries like Norway, there's a requirement for 2 blowout preventers. This country does not have that requirement. The second blowout preventer was not put on there. I don't know the cost of a blowout preventer. It could be $500,000, it could be $5 million, it could be $50 million. I really don't care. The point is, the second blowout preventer could have prevented this, probably. And we wouldn't have this disaster. Now you think about that, if you're a businessman, so you spend $50 million to put on the second blowout preventer, or 500,000, it doesn't matter. And you prevent this. Look at where these guys are now. There's been billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars that have gone out the door to clean this up. Lots of lives ruined, lots of livelihoods ruined because somebody wanted to make an extra 25% that quarter in their revenue statements. It's a simple little thing like a second preventer. A little bit of conservation before the disaster could have prevented this. But then we continue. There's going to be some gruesome pictures. I'm sorry for squeamish stomachs. Why do we do this? This is based on greed. Why do we do this? Because we forgot to care. We get our little plastic bag down at the grocery store. It goes someplace. That's where it goes. It's because we are disconnected from our environment. We've forgotten to care. We live in a building like this. We have heat. We have air conditioning. And we have a big screen TV. We have the Discovery Channel. It's awesome. Then we take things like this. I showed the 4th graders this morning. This doesn't look so bad. There's one Coke bottle just hanging out. Turns into this in Indonesia. This young man here, I told the 4th graders this morning, he doesn't go to school. He will never go to school probably, but that's what he gets for his life. That's what he'll be doing, is picking that stuff out that floats into that river there, into that bay, and that will be his life, scavenging that junk out of there. Started with a Coke bottle somebody carelessly threw away. I know when I was growing up, 60s and the 70s, we had, it was by Lady Bird Johnson, "Don't be a litter bug." It does cute little things. It was President Johnson's wife. It was her thing. Don't be a litter bug. I don't know. I think people didn't listen. Then we have things like this out on our planet that we love. We all say that, and we love this planet. And here in the United States, this is especially good. This is our national symbol. He's sitting in a landfill full of toxic burning rubbish and electronics. He's looking for something to eat. I know eagles are a bit of a scavenger, but that's a terrible picture. And all this leads to some things like this, because people don't really care. We end up with photos like this, because the food isn't available. The environment's ruined, and this is an older picture. This was taken in South Sudan. And you end up with photos like this. Man, unfortunately, I'll tell you some history about this guy. The guy that took this photo, he was a photographer. He was a famous photographer. He took that photo. There's a lot of controversy about this photo, but at the same time, he could not stay and say that child he left. A few years later, he ended up committing suicide. So that's the history of that photo. But through that neglect that we have as human beings on this beautiful planet that we all say we love, we end up, through that whole series that we just saw, into points like this. How can that be? Well, the people I work with, this is the happier part of the show, I promise. The people I work with are Native people. And the people I work with every day that I'm the executive director of is the Yukon River Intertribal Watershed Council. And they gave this a lot of thought, all these things that we're thinking about. Now, the Watershed Council is an international organization in Canada and the United States. It's 70 tribes and First Nations. We just added 2 more, so we're at 72 now. They work by consensus. The entire board is the 72 tribal leaders of these places. And they took a look around and said, well, first of all, we're responsible for this. They didn't point the finger the other way. They took that leadership role that said, okay, we got to look at ourselves first. And what are we going to do? Well, they moved on. This is where they live and work. The blue part is the watershed of the Yukon River. And of course the white part's Alaska, laid over the United States, so you can get some idea of the scale we're talking about here. The blue part's about 325,000 square miles. It's a huge place. Alaska, you know, you see it on the Weather Channel or on some maps. It's like this big. It's down here by Hawaii. That's not true. This is what it really looks like. It's a huge, huge place. And these people that live up there, they look no different than us. Family-oriented culture that love their river. They have grandparents just like us. He's even a university guy. It's very family-oriented, though, and it's a subsistence culture. Now, so I asked the kids this morning, where do you get your groceries? What was that place? Wiggins? Is that That's not where our groceries come from. If you live out in the bush, this is where your groceries come from. You pick it, you hunt it, you grow it. That's where you get your food. There is little stores in the community, but you know they're more like a. Most places they're more like the place like you know, junk food. It's not the good high quality food. When elders from these communities go to the hospital in Anchorage for whatever they need, the hospital realizes they have to have these foods, because if you feed them the food from town or the food from, you know, the grocery store, they get sick. It's just proven, so they just change their whole thing. And this is where you get your food. You hunt it, fish it, you grow it. It ends up like this. That makes our Alaska audiences just salivate. It's a lot of food right there. Bath night's a little different up there. Just throw them all on. That's a fish tote. And Saturday night entertainment's a little different too. A lot of communities there are dry, no alcohol, but they have big gatherings and dances, and they can go on. I wish I could take you all up there. The dance starts at about like 6 or 7. You're lucky if you're done by 6 or 7 in the morning the next day. And then everybody takes a little nap, gets some stuff to eat, and you start at 6 or 7 again. This goes on for 3 days. You're absolutely exhausted when it's all done. But these people all came together as a group to do something about what they were saying. And the leaders were the guys that said, okay, this is what we're doing. So they thought about it some more, and what was it? They said, we've got to understand our environment, we've got to do something about our environment, and we're going to do it ourselves. We're not going to wait for the government to come and rescue us. Because one thing, the government they have a lot of things to do in the first place. And remember, we're native people. The cavalry coming over the hill to rescue you, it's not good for us. You guys have all seen the movies. Never works out. Never quite got that. So we started training our youth. Of course, that's me when I was still good looking and rich. But we started training our youth in some of the most advanced technologies on how to understand their environment. Because one thing we do know now is when we go to the government, the leaders of our countries, Canada or the United States, and say our fish and birds are dying, they don't care. They're like, that's nice. And the reason they do that is because it's not in their language. They don't have that connection like we do to their environment. They don't have to go out and shoot the birds or fish the fish or gather the berries to eat. They go to Wiggins, Safeway, I don't know, Whole Foods. I've been to Whole Foods, it's pretty nice. They go to those places to get their groceries, so they don't care. But when we can come to them and say, you know what, scientifically, we know what's going on here. The dissolved oxygen in the water is off. The temperatures are too high. The salmon are not coming anymore, and that's why. They have to listen to us. We have the scientific data. It's in their language. They understand that. So we've trained a lot of people. They're all native people. We've now created the world's largest indigenous water monitoring network in the entire planet. People like you and me, I mean, we're not scientists. You guys heard my story. I finished the 9th grade. That's it. I haven't had any education past that. Not formal education like you guys. I mean, you guys are brilliant. I'm glad you're here because you guys are the leaders of the future. But these are folks just like me, doing the science. Some of the high-tech science. This is a thing called ADP, an acoustic Doppler profiler. It's about a $30,000, $40,000 piece of equipment. On some mistake in government financing, we ended up with 2 of them. It's awesome. Research centers are calling us now to rent these things from us because we have 2 of them. They don't have 1. It's awesome. But we did it culturally, though. And how I say that is this has to make sense to us, too. And how does that work? You know, it's like, you can see this is what we would call a dugout canoe. This is a very large wooden, made out of one tree. It takes about a year to build one of these. And we hook up equipment to the back of these. And let's see if we got, there's some of my best little friends. My wife and I here, there's Mary back there. In 2006, this is going to give you an explanation of the equipment we use nowadays. In 2006, the tribal leadership came to me and said, John, we want you to go out and take the pulse of the river. And that was it. That was my entire instruction manual. That's a very native way to do things. The tribal leaders said, take the pulse of the river. I was waiting for some more, I really was. I'm like, see ya. And I said, okay, what are we going to do? So I said, I got with some pretty brilliant folks, and we sat around and thought about it, and we thought we were really smart. We got 2 canoes. We were going to go down the entire Yukon River, and we were going to talk to people about environmental stewardship and talk about their lives on the river. And we thought, that's the pulse of the river. We were going along. We thought we were really cool. It was 8 months of planning to pull this off, because You have to stack up the supplies, you have to get money, all the things you have to do an expedition. Right before we left, 3 weeks before we left, I sat down with the troops. And I said, guys, this is not going to work. Nobody is going to care. Not a soul on this planet is going to care. And they said, why not? And I said, because it's too kumbaya. All right, you're losing your mind, dude. What's going on? And I said, well, because nobody's going to care, because when Native people go do this, it's too hippie for them. And hippies are my best friends. My older brother was the best hippie on the planet. He was so cool. But it was just too not in their mindset. 2 Indians in a canoe going down the river. It's like the cavalry thing. Everybody's seen the movies. It's the stereotype. That's what we do. We care about the environment. You guys probably saw the commercial from the 70s, I think. The guy wasn't actually an Indian. But with the tear running down his cheek, and honestly, you can look it up, he wasn't really an Indian. But that's what we're supposed to do. So they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, here's what we're going to do. I said, I'm going to get a bunch of those bottles that you scientists use, and when I see ugly water, I'll take up a scoop of it, put it in the jar, I'll bring it to you guys and test it, it'll be cool, right? He said, no, it won't be cool, you big dumb ox. He said, you can paddle a canoe. He said, you don't know jack about science, pal. And I said, all right, here's what I do know. I said, I'm a retired Navy Chief Petty Officer. And I said, it didn't matter what environment I was working in, whether I was at 30, 40,000 feet in the air, whether I was underwater, I was on the surface of the water. I had to understand my environment or I would die. I said, I had sensors that told me that. Some of them I wore on my wrist. Some of them I just had in pouches. But I understood my environment, every bit of my environment. I had to. It was a survival thing. I said, I want a sensor. I want it to work, I want it to be easy, and I need it like tomorrow. We were leaving in 3 weeks. So we went to a company called YSI. They gave us a $25,000 sensor. I'm going to lose it. They said, that's okay, we got lots. We sat down and built our own custom computer programs. We built, uh-oh, we're out of juice. Fix that. Add the technology. We went to a company called Eureka, and we got equipment that could broadcast our results in real time. We solar powered everything so we could be environmentally friendly and not use disposable batteries to power all of our equipment. And we set off down the river. Down the river we went, and when we left, my friends, my scientist friends were looking at John going down the river. Take a second here. Here we go. When we left, my scientist friends, they were from USGS, they were from Woods Hole Research Center, they were from Duke University, several other places. They waved goodbye to Crazy John. Goodbye, see ya, hope you make it, I hope you survive the Yukon River, that'll be cool. Down the river we went. 2.5 months later, we get out at the end of the Yukon River. We had just created, first ever on the whole planet, a 2.5 month water quality profile of the entire river system at the river speed. Because the one thing I know from paddling canoes, they're not fast, especially in a river. You're not going to out paddle the river. You're going to go 5 miles an hour, that's it. Right at the water speed, we had a water profile of the entire river system. Well, that set the scientific world on fire. They said, John, that's the first time that's ever been done. Sorry, it was a mistake. We didn't think we were going to do that, but they got really excited. We've kept doing it now. This is just from this last summer. We were out on the Stewart River and then the Yukon River again for about a month, taking these samples, doing the water quality profiles. The U.S. government now comes to the native people to understand the Yukon River. They own the data. It's something they don't have. It's an amazing thing that's happened. It's a switch in the leadership of taking care of the environment, from waiting for the government to come and save you, to us taking the reins and saying, we're going to run the show now. our job. So, pretty cool. Another pretty cool part about this is, first time I went, I had a boss. I had to tell the boss, you know, I gotta be gone 3 months on the river. I'm gonna be in a canoe. I am gonna be working. He's like, what? And I was gone 3 months. He thought I was on vacation. The other part of this, though, and this is the important part to remember, we got the scientific data, and it's very good. Like I said, even the government of Canada is now coming to us to understand the Yukon River. Yukon's influence on climate change is immense. At times, the input into the Arctic Ocean, from the carbon input into the Arctic Ocean, is the most of all the Arctic rivers. That's huge in the world of climate change. Like I said, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand exactly how all those things work, but when they tell me that, it seems significant, especially when they're calling us. A presidential appointment, they have me advising those people on what to do next. That's crazy. I mean, you guys should be advising them. I'm an old guy, you're the young folks. Your future is long, mine's short. That's a fact of life. But listening to people like you guys, young people, what do you want to see in the environment in the future? What do you see happening to the environment right now? Those are things that are important to listen to and document. Part of what we're doing now is something called the Network of Indigenous Knowledge. We've taken everything we've learned and we've turned it into a global initiative involving Native people around the world. You guys are welcome to join us. It does the scientific documentation. It does the documentation of their history, their culture, their languages, and it overlays that on top of the scientific data and paints a more beautiful picture of the world and helps us make more quality decisions on where to go in the future. Climate change, I'm not going to argue if it's real or not. Some people say yes, some people say no. My point is, it's our planet. Why aren't we taking the best care of it we can? Who cares if it's climate change or not? Let's take the best care of the planet, not a half-assed care of the planet. So listening to young people like Jamie here, or this is Norma. She's like 92 years old. You guys all know what a four-wheeler is. She's the fastest four-wheel driver I know. She rides that thing wide open everywhere she goes. She greets everybody that comes to her community. It's Ruby, Alaska. And she's a wonderful resource. So she's 92. She can tell us stories that her 92-year-old grandmother told her when she was 10 years old. And where did those stories come from? From her grandmother's 92-year-old grandmother when she was 10 years old. So very quickly, you're like a couple hundred years in history. Climate history, maybe. Environmental history, maybe. Maybe the best fry bread recipe, who knows? But this is all important stuff to us as human beings, because sometimes what we've forgotten in our charge into the future is we as humans, we are the environment too. We're part of the environment. We have probably the biggest impact on the environment. And how have we forgotten? Well, we're in here. We have heat. We barely anymore spend our time outdoors. I'm not saying just go outdoors to be outdoors. We barely have a connection to our environment anymore, and it's really hard for us. Like the forest I showed you in Brazil, it's cut down. Does everybody in this room, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of it, but do we care enough to do something about it? Not really. It's not in our backyard. So we're not. Some of those trees come to places now that sell us lumber to build our houses. Put beautiful floors in our houses. They get here illegally, but we don't care enough to stop it because we're disconnected from that. It's not in our backyard. Norma, she can tell you about things like that. So I would suggest, as we listen to the youth, you guys, we also listen to these guys. Maybe go home and talk to Grandma, say, how was it when you were 10? So I've heard that from people like this, that the birds I used to see don't come anymore. Well, what happened to them? And that's our reality right now. Whatever bird it is, let's say it was the mourning dove. Let's say they were in their region when they were young, but now they're not there anymore. Well, all we know is that the mourning dove doesn't live here. Actually, they used to. And somebody like that could tell us. Just a thought. Well, some of the work we've done, this is my very frightened friend. We took all this. Now, there's the other part of it. You can collect all the data. You can collect all the stories. If you don't do anything with it, it's not going to matter. You'll have a bunch of data that goes into, I do this too often. I don't know, I don't have a paper here. When you guys finish your degrees, if you're a scientist, I get to work with a lot of scientists, and I'm not one. Some of them measure some of them, not all of them. Some of them measure their relevance by how many papers they produce. I don't know if anybody ever reads those papers. It's like a paper mill. I met a guy one time, I was speaking on the stage with him, I won't use his name. He's very famous. In his bio, they had about 8 pages of papers he had published. And they were in like fine print. It was awesome. It gave him relevance for himself, but I don't know if anybody ever read those papers. My point here is, as we collect all this data, do something with it. Take it to the leaders or become a leader and do something with that data. So what do we do with our data? We knew these things are in the water, we got to get them out. And we said, okay, what do we got to do that? We sat down and said, well, we need some training. That's how we ended up in these things. The moon suits, they're pretty fun. We documented the sites. There are hundreds of them. In the state of Alaska alone, just on our watershed, we're at 309 sites that need cleanup. This is a Department of Defense site, left over from World War II. Those are leaking barrels that have been leaking since, I don't know, 1940s. Some of them are empty now, so it's all on the ground. We contacted the Department of Defense, we strong-armed them a bit. We have a huge cleanup project going there now to make this better. Took the data, took the training, made it happen. Things move on though. Our communities up and down the Yukon have now removed, I don't know, it's about 18 million pounds of junk and hazardous waste. It doesn't just go to somebody else's landfill. All of this stuff gets recycled. That was something we did not want to do, was send it to somebody else to be their problem. Electronics, we all have them. Cell phones, cameras, computers, worst stuff on the planet to go into your landfill. It can all be recycled. It all has value. All these materials. These old junk cars, they become new junk cars. Then we raised our eyes up a little bit. We were focusing on our watershed, 325,000 square miles. That's broad focus, actually. But we were focusing on our watershed. And then we kind of raised our eyes up a little bit and said, okay, there's a lot of people out there. A lot of indigenous people, but there's just a lot of people out there. I don't know what it is now, 7 billion or something. And we looked at places like this. I love this picture. It's like artwork to me. This is the estuary system of the Lena River in Russia. It's a huge river. It flows through Siberia, the Sakha Republic, and into the Arctic Ocean. This river, at times, its freshwater input into the Arctic Ocean is there's only 7 major Arctic rivers. Its input into the river, into the Arctic Ocean at times is 4 times what everybody else is putting in. It's amazing. The people that live there look kind of like this. They look a lot like us. 2 legs. It's a lot colder there. When I worked there, it's been the warmest we saw. It was minus 45 degrees every day. It's a crazy place. They have families just like us. Dress a little different, but families just like us. They look just like us. Other places like this, these things are like beautiful artwork. This is the Mackenzie River Delta. The grocery store looks like that with these people, these the Dene people. Those other folks in Siberia, the Yakut and Navajo people. These are the Dene people. I had the great honor of traveling with them a long ways. The red meat there was as we were pulling into the beach one day, 2 moose broke out of the brush. We jumped out with the guns and we had dinner. These fish, we had caught about 90 fish that day. We were traveling by canoe. It was pretty nice. But you can see, it's just happy family stuff. These are their kids. Look like probably some of the guys you grew up with. It's all the same out there. We were looking around at all these places. This is the project we have in Africa, in a war-torn place called South Sudan. Their communities look like this. No McMansions in there. Oh, it's jumping around. Oh my gosh. Let's see if we can get back there. Their playground looks like this. That's a crashed MiG-15 from their wars. They went through about 40 years of civil war. They had 20 years of civil war. They took a little break, 4 or 5 years, went back to 20 more years of civil war. This is South Sudan. This is not Darfur. The people in South Sudan ask me questions like this. They say, oh, you Americans, you carried Darfur, 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 Darfur. They said, you know, there's only 300,000 people that have died in Darfur. And I said, yeah. They said, did you know during our wars, 2.5 million people died? And you Americans said nothing. I was like, I was disconnected. I'm very sorry. This is the granddaddy of them all, grandmother of them all, maybe. This is the Amazon. And the people in the headwaters look like this. Mary and I just returned from there. We're working with the Machienga tribes. It's a beautiful place. This is the Pango de Manique. The kids look like that. They were out practicing. That's a target practice thing. It looks like a pig. They shoot it with arrows. I don't know. We were down at the river fishing with them. These little kids here, probably about that age, were walking around carrying 3-foot machetes. I think somebody here would have called Child Protective Services, but pretty common down there. That's how they live their lives. No different than us, though. They're just living their lives, and they care. The documentation part, we started that down there, so that's where I'm going with all this. We took this look around the world. We started creating this network of indigenous knowledge. We're now working with tribes around the world, connecting them together with this scientific data collection, with this cultural, let's say, traditional knowledge collection. You'll hear the term TEK, throw that one away. It's too confining. Traditional ecological knowledge, there's way more than just traditional ecological knowledge. There's native knowledge out there. Our governments absolutely desire this knowledge. A lot of scientists desire this knowledge because it paints a much more colorful picture of what's going on our planet. These people are place-based people. They've lived in this place, they say, since time immemorial. Other scientists, modern Eurocentric scientists, say 20,000 years. Who cares? 20,000 years is long enough to know something about where you live. Especially this spot. I'll show you a picture a little later of Augustine. That's our friend Augustine. This is a very special spot for them. It definitely drives home the value of that place-based culture that can tell you about what's going on there. This 5 square miles here is in the top 10 of the on the whole planet of most biologically diverse places on the planet. It's their creation story starts right at that spot, right about where he's sitting. So, I don't know, makes sense. So all this, these are Evenk and Yakut people, are coming together, all these people, these native people, and we've arrived at a time on the planet where the native people really feel that they can help the people that came here understand what's going on. This, I say that this is said around campfires when I'm working with native people. Okay, the guys that came here, and we're like, yeah, those white guys. And I'm trying not to be impolite. Really, this is kind of funny. But the white guys showed up. And we'd given them about, I don't know, 400 years. Maybe 500 years. And look what they've done. So when they got here, we helped them out. You know, they didn't know how to eat. They didn't even take baths. What the heck's with those guys? So we taught them all that stuff. And said, take care of it. And we gave up our lands. You know, we had some wars and there were some bad things happen along the way. But it just gradually kept going down like this. So now the time has come. The Native people are saying, okay, these guys need some help. We've given them plenty of time to figure it out. They've run it off the rails. It's time to bring it back on, and we want to help. So now the Native people are coming together, not just with me in our group, with the network of Indigenous knowledge, but no matter where I go on the planet, they're coming together saying, we need to help these people figure this out. We can help them. We will take their modern science, we'll take what we know, we'll combine it, and we will help them understand this planet and how to live on this planet properly. And this is helping all around the world, no matter where you go. People are agreeing to this. When we look into the future, this is the way we see this digital connections. Google, Samsung, you name it. Nokia, they're all coming together to help us do this. A digital link between all these cultures to figure this out and make it a better planet going into the future. It's causing happiness everywhere, especially in South Sudan. We're so happy to hear this, that people are going to listen to what they have to say about their culture and what's going on up here on the planet and how we're going to take care of it going into the future. Because this is our future. And we've got to get this right for these guys. This is really important. We can't get this wrong. There is no planet B. We can't go that fast. There's a lot of can'ts. There's a lot of can. And that's in this room. You guys are the leaders of the future. And I really want you to think about that. They say leaders are born. Well, you guys were born, so you got that qualification down. You probably need some mentoring and some training, and that's why you're here in this university, Cornell University. So now it's time to take, when you get out of here, I don't know when that's be. Some of you guys are at first year, some are fourth year, I don't know. You need to take everything you learn and create that, take that and create leadership under yourself. Every one of you guys can be a leader in this. You have to take that step. And what's that take? It takes courage. It takes the courage to go against the grain sometimes. I mean, you know, you just can't step out there and, you know, just go with the flow. That's how we got where we are. You've probably got to go upstream. You got to go against the grain. You've got to make the right decisions, even if everybody else is like, no, you know what, it'd just be easier to, like, you know, I don't know, we'll watch UFC tonight, that'd be cool. We've got to get away from that. You guys, it's your turn, it really is. It's your time. And I think you can do it. I mean, I have great hope. Always, like you said. So, this is the part I really, truly love, and this is how we're going to get this right. Please come up here. Yeah. Oh, yes, ma'am. No way to escape this. It's just like, I don't think there's any way to escape getting this right. So everybody on your feet. This is the audience participation part. I love this part. Stand up like that. You saw it in the presentation. Go ahead and just put your hand next to somebody just like this. We're not in church. I promise it won't hurt. You're going to touch somebody you've never touched before? Awesome, isn't it? Wow. But feel that. We are all the same here. We all live on the same planet. That's planet A, not planet B. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers, warm blood, and reasonable intelligence. It doesn't matter where we go. We're all the same. We have that common thread. It's called humanity. And we've got to get this right. So, that's your assignment. You're all connected now. You're all part of what we're doing. And you are the leaders of the future. Get to work. Thank you. I'll give you one more slide, though. And this is my friend Augustine. And this is what he said about his place on the planet.
So this is dangerous given what I know about Jon and his inability to say no to questions, but I think we have time for some questions. Bear in mind that students in our leadership class will have some time with Jon one-on-one right after this talk. So I'd just like to welcome any questions or comments from the audience.
Oh, I couldn't answer them all.
When you collect your data and go to the governmental bureaucracy to look at ways of actually implementing solutions to the problems do you see how cooperative or how much efficiency or fluency is there in them supporting you in those initiatives to is it like pulling codes or is it?
Depends on which government. I'll say this quick. We've taken our scientific data for the Alaska tribes and then the Canadian First Nations, and we've turned it into a water management plan for the entire Yukon watershed, which is actually an expression of their native water rights. Now, native water rights in the United States and Canada exist. They've never been defined or asserted. So we've taken our scientific data, we've now defined them. Next week on the 20th, I have a meeting with Secretary Jewell, Secretary of Interior, to start the assertion. Now, we've been doing this work now 3.5 years to get to the point where we had this meeting. And we've had a lot of questions just like you are asking right now. The Alaska state government came to us. They're fairly conservative resource extraction sort of government. They're first, after 3 hours of talking to me about what our plan was all about, I finally had to stop them and say, okay, what do you exactly want to know? And their answer to me was, we want to know if you're going to stop development in the state of Alaska. And I said, only if you infringe upon our rights. They left. The U.S. federal government, though, was welcoming. When we went and saw them a couple of years ago, we went to the Department of Interior, to the solicitor's office. They got so excited that we were going to define this for them. They sent us some of their top solicitors from their office to help us navigate the U.S. legal system. So it was pretty exciting. The Canadian government was a little less welcoming. The Harper administration, their first phone call to me was, Mr. Waterhouse, just what in the hell do you think you're doing? I said, I'm asserting my rights. So, it's a mixed bag. Some of it's going to be pulling toes. The thing is, though, the United Nations has identified the right to clean water as a human right. So that's how important this is. Got to pull some toes to get there? I don't care. That's okay with me. Other questions?
When you talk to the Indigenous people, you said earlier that they're all really willing to help the white people and share knowledge. Do you come across any that are like angry or hostile towards?
At times, yeah. Even my own tribes. Mary's first exposure to one of the tribes I'm from 3 different cultures. It was a very big meeting. 66 tribes were there. And they threw her out of the room. And she thought, well, she didn't know what to think. They're like, you're out of here right now. And it was like my cousin threw her out of the room. The reason for throwing her out of the room was they were going to talk bad about white people. And because she's married to me, they didn't want to embarrass her. So it was more of a polite thing, but they were a little bit rough about it. Yeah, there are angry people, a lot of angry people, but you know, given the history, yeah, it's understandable, but at the same time, that's the past history. We can learn from it, and we need to move ahead into the new history where we work together, and that's where we try to guide those people to. We can't just be bitter the rest of our lives. It won't work. We can't work together.
What have you done? Speak a little bit about what you've done in the way of pairing between native and non-native First people and people coming in the projects. Has there been some of that?
Oh, absolutely. Some of it's funny on both sides because we don't understand each other. But you know, I have a staff now of about 20 people that work at the council. Out of that 20, there's like 5 native people and 15 non-native people. And they're when you get to the non-native people, it's all colors. What we try to look at is our world is, you know, I know this sounds idealistic, but we do really try to look at it as colorblind. And that causes some funny instances. I mean, I was telling a story at lunch. Some scientists came to the Alaska Native community. They were going to show us where the salmon spawn, and they forgot probably to ask the locals. So this causes a funny instance where they spend 3 months figuring out where the salmon spawn. They come back to tell the native community that's where the salmon spawn, and the chief was kind of giggling. They said, "What's up, chief?" The chief said, "Do you know what the name of our village translates to in English?" Where the salmon spawn. So it's I think it's a learning process for all of us how to work together. I mean, it's going to continue for years, but it's a good thing, though. So, I mean, you know, like President Obama, this is what I like telling. You know, I was born in France. See, I think he said that. I was born in France, a little tiny village in France. I moved to the United States when I was a teen. Had to become a naturalized citizen, but I'm Native American. President Obama, I feel so sorry for you, man, because you went through that whole birther thing. But I kind of get it too, because you know my mom's Scottish, so you know that makes me just half of anybody in here that's not Native. So, just erase all that. Who cares, you know?
Just with all the information you gathered along the Yukon, what kind of changes or action did that lead to?
The biggest thing I've seen that caught my attention was the temperature changes. The temperature is actually going up on the Yukon. That's bad for the fish. And while we see the temperature of the water go up, we've seen the decline in the salmon stocks. It's caused another crisis in Alaska this year on the king salmon run. We're not sure what to do. One of the things we did see, though, that also struck me was on the very first journey in 2007, when we passed a river, it's a major tributary to the Yukon called the Tanana River, we saw a major nitrate spike. I'm like, holy moly, what's that all about? And then downriver at a place called Nulato, and that's about where the Yukon takes a hard left and goes south for a while. We saw a huge algae bloom. It was an orange algae bloom. We talked to the tribes and we talked to the elders and all that. Never seen that before. So we kind of traced it back. And the nitrates were coming from an area called Delta Junction. There's lots of farming activity there. And it was coming from their fertilizers. Now we're working with the state to change that out so it doesn't cause problems on the road. So you can, at times, all the science doesn't have to go into a paper on a shelf. It can actually cause action, policy change. One of the beauties of what we're seeing too is all these people, just like you, are voters. And once they become engaged, like our water quality monitoring network, it's the largest in the world, run by Indigenous people. Well, they're also voters in the United States of America. Go ahead and try and mess something up on their river. You're going to get a call if you're a congressman or a congresswoman. You know, we had an election in Alaska not too long ago, and there was a guy that his name was Joe Miller. And he was very, 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 very conservative. That's right, right? Right. And then there was Senator Murkowski, who is kind of a moderate Republican. Well, this guy won the primary. She was out. She's been in there for a while. Well, this guy was going to do a lot of things that Native people don't agree with, including things to the environment. They did a write-in vote for Senator Murkowski, and she's still in office. So that's kind of another way to make those policy changes. It's human.
So you spoke a lot about cooperating with governments like state, local, and federal as far as policy changes. How's the private sector, like corporations, small or large, reacted to any data you presented or any initiatives that you were trying to get going?
Mostly good. And I'll say that because like the backhaul program where we remove millions of pounds of hazardous waste, we couldn't do that by ourselves. And that's a view I very much take. That those guys are people too. Those guys, those women that work in those corporations, and we need them too. They actually have the technology that can help us. When we started that backhaul program, that's one of the reasons I started working with this council. They had been bugging me for years to come and be their director. I said, no, go away. And because I said, you know what, I just don't make one of those guys that can stand on the corner and hold a sign. They were all about advocacy. I said, bring me a project we can actually do and make a difference. They finally called me and said, you know, could you figure this out for us? And it was removing all the junk and hazardous waste from the Yukon. I said, I'll think about it. So what we did is we went to all the corporations. And you know, I put on my suit. I have like 2 suits, and I went to every corporation and I made an appointment to see the president, not the guys in the front of the office. I wanted to see the president of the corporation, and I sat down with them. And what got me there was a meeting with all my friends at the council. And I said, you know, remember I said about hippies, I love them to death. I really do. And these guys were very educated people, and I love them too. But they were trying to conceptualize this whole thing. And I finally stopped them and I said, look, they were telling me who I could or could not talk to. You can't talk to them because they're very conservative, right-wing, redneck kind of people. And those guys over there, they hate us because we're this or that, you know. And I said, no, you know what? If we're going to be successful, we need everybody. And I'll make it really simple to you. And they were all sitting around a table. I said, can anybody at this table but me drive a front loader? And they said, no. And I said, well, I've been blue collar all my life and I can drive a front loader. And I said, that's what we need. We need everybody. And I said, they might have a big corporation, but I guarantee you they care about clean water. In one of our videos, we have one of our leaders, and he says, you know, I'm here. I don't see anybody out there saying, I want dirty water. Nobody says that. Physiological fact is, I used to be a safety survival instructor for the Navy at one point. Generally about 6, 7, 8 days, you're going to die without water. Just, everybody's got to have it. You can't make water. You have to have it. So they understand it. So I went and saw these guys, and to a man, they had cared because they wanted to take their kids fishing, or they wanted to go swimming, or whatever. So I went back to my guys and said, they're going to help. And I said, here's the other part of the job. That's why I had the gloves there. These are your tools. Let's go to work. Put your clothes on, let's go to work. Those corporate guys totally got that. It's as simple as this. Let's go get to work, clean this up. Let's get some clean water. They brought their technology to bear, and now we've used a railroad car. To use a railroad car takes about $2,500 in the state of Alaska. We've used hundreds of them in kind. C-130s, we use them to haul out junk out of villages that we can't get to any other way. We use barges, we use ships, we use trucks, we use gloves, lots of people. It's probably in the millions and millions of dollars worth of material. It's because those guys care too. You just gotta sit down with them and talk them through it. Scrolling back to that Deepwater Horizon, I don't know if any of you guys are going to be in business someday, but I really want you to remember this, that when you start building that Deepwater Horizon, that big project, that building, whatever it is, build the conservation in the very beginning of your plan instead of after the disaster. It just makes sense. You know, I think the new generations realize that. The old guys, you know, like me, we didn't know that, but now we do. So just, yeah, follow that track. That'll be a good thing.
So I think actually we need to...
Oh, we got one more.
If you need to leave, please feel free. We'll just let
How can we contribute to your work?
How can you contribute? Oh boy. You know, they had me go to a place, what was that place, Mary? I don't remember. It was the Nobel Peace Prize conference? Something, whatever it was. I had the same question. Sort of. A guy asked me, how can I join you? And he was very excited. I think he wanted to run off to the end of the planet with me, you know. And I said, that's not going to be effective, I said. And I asked him, I said, where are you from? He said, Missouri. And I said, well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back to where you're from and start in your neighborhood and, I don't know, clean it up or something, and then expand from there and do more in your area, and then and I said, our paths will cross when we were going down the road someday. I remember you from that thing and a Nobel thing. That's probably the best way. I mean, I would love if I could just load you all out and take you to Alaska right now, or down to Peru, or back to Siberia with me, or Africa. It's a little unrealistic. I can leave my email address though, and then we can exchange ideas and build from there. That would probably be the best thing for me to do. I think you have my email. So there's a big offer. If you guys want to be involved in this, and this is a global initiative, and you've heard my connections. President Obama sends his hello. Not really. Actually, he does. I think he would love to be here. But National Geographic, all these kind of things, send me an email, and we can figure it out. I mean, we can figure out what to do in your area or someplace out on the planet. You guys are going to end up, when you leave Cornell, you're going to scatter to the world. You're going to be all over the place, and we can exchange emails and figure out how to do it there. That'll be more effective than joining me on the Yukon River. We get a lot more done that way.
Maybe you could write your email and then maybe just take a picture or write it down as we go.
That's another secret. I can barely write. I'll do the best I can, no, I promise. You guys got the name all right. The one that's related to my work. There we go.
Wonderful. Jon, thank you so much. Thank all of you for coming. Leadership students, if you want to just stay here for the time being, the Explorations and Leadership class. And everybody else, enjoy the beautiful weather and what's meant to be a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much.